from the Indie Escape Network. This is Cymbalistic Cynicism, and our guest today is Steve Rubin. Can you tell us a little about yourself, Steve?
Hi, Gabe. Sure. I'm a working writer, producer in Hollywood. I'm out there every day trying to sell movies and television shows. I've produced 5 films, including a Hallmark Channel World War II drama called Silent Night, which was a true story that took place during the Battle of the Bulge when German and American combat troops actually were invited into a cabin in the Ardennes, and a German woman held a truce for 12 hours. True story, and I was very happy that we were nominated for 4 Canadian Television Academy Awards, which was cool. I also produced the Showtime baseball comedy Bleacher Bums. When I'm not working on movies and TV shows, I also write about the film business. I'm the author of several books, and I'm now also a children's book author. With David Lee Miller, we wrote The Cat Who Lived with Anne Frank, which is also has morphed into an animated film project, which we're outselling as well. I also have a podcast, which I can tell you a little bit about later, but I'm
sure.
all about the movies. I guess, it's just, it's in, out. In fact, I'm so involved in the movies that when I walk into a silent room in my house, I turn on a cassette player and I play an audio movie as I'm doing my thing.
It's the audio and or visual stimulation that some people just really need. Like, yeah, I know exactly what that's like. I have Tourette syndrome, so I love music, love movies. I grew up with it, but like I can't, like, I go insane if I'm like doing anything in my room and I don't have some music or movies playing in the background, because it's just
Absolutely
like
silent. Some people think silence is golden. I think silence
not for
is
us.
boring.
Yeah, it's like when some people in college they work better in a library where it's complete silence. Other people work better with their headphones on or with the crowd, the traffic going on around them, all the people. That's how I do. Like, my version of working from home is sitting at a cafe with my headphones on, a busy cafe, even not busy, and doing work. Like, I do video editing, photography, videography, so I'm on video editing. I'm more comfortable in a uh, busy, crowded setting when I'm more focused. I'm less likely to get distracted to do this or watch a movie or go play piano. Like, I'm more focused in what I have to do, and I'm motivated. And yeah,
We're kindred spirits because Billy Reback, my writing partner, I have two. He and I write the comedy together. One of our favorite writing spots was a shopping mall, and we would go in there, and we would be right near the food court, and we'd be surrounded by nannies and little babies screaming, yelling. The more the merrier. We got so much comedy done listening to those babies and those toddlers.
inspiration,
Inspiration.
unsuspected inspiration. It's I love that. It's like, you don't in not only that, sometimes people learn from you. Can I tell you something? Like, said I'd work at the computer a lot, so I literally, like, as I'm sitting talking to you now, I have like a stand that, so I can more eye level. So when I'm working, I'm not slouching so much. And people, and this is one I keep set at home, but I have a portable one that people see. I'm like, that's a great thing. And they go, where did you get that? And like, because I work on the computer a lot, and I said, just go on Amazon. They're so inexpensive. And people are so thankful, because when they work on the computer for hours on end, or whether it be at the office, it's just better for your back.
Well, I actually, about 5 years ago, I bought a stand-up desk,
My
and
mother has one of those. My mother was a teacher for 26 years. When she was listening to the news, and she would grade papers, and she couldn't sit for too long, she just stood and
oh yeah,
yeah.
well, I'm standing right now. I do all my podcasting standing, and I was told by a acupressurist who did deep tissue massage that 40 years of sitting at a computer, leaning into my computer screen or the typewriter way back when, had moved all of my musculature forward. I guess they call it fascia. And they have to break up the fascia to get you back to your default. So he spent about 4 months. I had some shoulder issues, deep removing this fascia.
Wow.
I had no idea what fascia was.
Sounds like Shonda. I don't know. It's just, I get. But
So I am fascia free, and I hope to stay that way.
it's funny, right? Like what were using is like a you know a stender. You were both Jewish, so you know what like the rabbis have that the thing they put the book on or they speak
Right,
from
right on the podium, on the
the
bema,
podium.
sure.
Like yeah. So it's like the stender, and I'm like that's what basically what it is. It's a stender. I don't want to call it a stender. I call it an extender because it gets changed
Sure,
the
sure, no, perfectly, but I think
angle.
we all have to be aware of the fact that as human beings, sitting is not a natural position for us. We were born to be chased by saber-toothed tigers and to lie down and go to sleep by the fire. Nobody had chairs back in 1,000,000 years BC.
You reminded me when my mother asked her students, "So what did you have growing up that what did my generation have growing up? What does your generation have growing up that we didn't?" And the kids, of course, say fire, the wheel, like just to mess with but she knows like they're just having fun. But I just want to like, who is the actress who was in Silent Night? Was that who I think it was, the main actress?
Yeah, Linda Hamilton, the Terminator later. Ironically, she plays a woman who's terminating the action between these two opposing sides. But Linda was great. I mean, she just
I
was
love
she
her.
came to work and she has a really cool German accent and
I
that
met
was
her a couple
oh,
of times. She kissed me. Like I've been writing a book on I have Tourette syndrome since I was very young. The last 10 years I've been writing a book on Tourette syndrome. I finished the first draft 2016, so it's been 6 years ago. And I haven't been editing it like I should. I'm working on it. The second draft, somebody said to me, writing is rewriting. A few people said it to me. But like, what's it called? When I talked to her about it, and after we took a photo on my birthday, she gave me a kiss on the neck and cheek, and she was such a sweetheart. She absolutely loved me, and she remembered me last time we met. But like, it was the female Terminator and Schwarzenegger's stunt double who I really connected with, because one of them had a buddy he worked out with who has Tourette's, and the female Terminator, Kristanna Loken, put me in touch with a friend of hers who has Tourette's, with the hopes he could help me. It's like you meet. It's just amazing the connections you make with people. But Linda Hamilton, such a sweetheart, such a
and
cool
such
human
a
being.
pro, just a pro. She came to work and we made this movie in Montreal in the summer of 2002. And it's so funny. We're making a winter movie in the Ardennes in the summer of Montreal. So, it's rural Montreal, and of course, Montreal during the winter has 5 feet of snow, and yet we were making the movie in the summer, and we had to make snow.
You didn't even have just half an inch. You just.
Nothing, nothing. So they would drive these big dump trucks out to the set with these huge blocks of ice and a shredder. And the guy had hoses. They had hoses and they hosed down the ground, creating instant snow.
They
And
do. I feel
it
like they've
looks
done that a
cool.
lot for those films to create not artificial snow. Well, sort of artificial snow, but it is in a sense
Well,
snow.
the ground cover is real, but then they bring in the wind machines and they
Okay.
have a big plastic bags full of something they call snow biz. And snow biz is biodegradable flakes that look like snowflakes in front of the camera.
And
Pretty
yeah,
cool.
that's so interesting. Yeah, people. There's such interesting stories I've heard people talk about from sets. Some funny ones, some unfortunate ones, and some like really like you're blown away at the things what they come up with to substitute not just materials, but like approaches to like well, just about anything, to be honest. Like I do the more technical field, but I like what's great about technical fields. You're always learning and you're experiencing new things, and you're also hearing a lot of funny stories. I know you know who Carrie Elwes is.
Oh, sure, of course. The Princess Bride.
So I've known him for 10 years. We're not in touch, but he's known me for a long time. And he talked about this more publicly, but I've heard so many set stories, but one of his stories is about one of his first jobs in the production field as an AD for Marlon Brando. And that's risky because the thing about Marlon Brando, I believe he got paid $100 for every hour he was late. So, and he had some really funny stories, and he gave Carrie a different name. It's just like it's just so like you hear these stories from behind the scenes, but then you hear the stories like also some movies like they play pranks on each other just to get through the day. I don't know if you ever
I
had
have a
that.
great Twilight Zone prank. One of the classic episodes of the Twilight Zone. You know, of course, I wrote the Twilight Zone
The ri
encyclopedia.
oh, yes, and James Bond, I got us something to bring
Right.
up about that, yes.
And so Richard Donner, the great feature film director who would later direct the Lethal Weapon series and the early Superman movies, he was directing the episode called Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, where William Shatner, a Star Trek fan, looks out the window and
There's
he sees
something annoying the plane.
exactly. This little creature's tearing up the wings. So apparently, Donner was shooting this on a tank set, which is a soundstage with a tank for the water to collect because they had to pour this water on the wings to create a storm that's going on when this creature's digging into the cowling on the engine. So he
See that.
takes a break and goes to get a coffee, and he hears a scream from the set, and he comes racing back. And there at the bottom of the tank in the concrete, lying on the floor, is with his on his stomach is looks like a dead William Shatner. Oh my God, they've lost their star. And of course, after a couple of minutes, Shatner sits up and says, "Gotcha."
Oh my god, that's terri oh my god, that's hilarious. I actually my father would tell me how him and his brother watched that when it first came on, and they literally jumped out of their seats. My uncle, him and his my
Twilight
he and my
Zone.
uncle.
Twilight Zone was a show that just took the straight ahead story and went sideways with it constantly. And I remember being an 8-year-old kid walking into the living room. My parents were watching an episode called The Silence about a private club where this motor mouth won't stop talking and pitching whatever he's selling. And this older member says, "I'll bet you $500,000 that you can't talk for a year." And so he's a wealthy guy, figures, the guy will give up after a month or so. So the guy goes into quarantine in the basement of this private club in a glass enclosure. And literally they're monitoring him every minute to make sure he doesn't talk. I looked at that episode for about 5 minutes. I said, this is too freaky. I'm getting out of here. For an 8-year-old, the thought of not talking for a year would be death.
I
So
gotta check out that
I never
episode.
watched The Twilight Zone again until they came
Really?
into reruns. I was just too freaked out by it.
There were some episodes that scarred me, but I was one of those few that actually found the night his night gallery even more frightening.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Because
Night Gallery was not Rod Serling's. Not Rod
right.
Serling was kind of a hired gun.
Oh,
He
he was,
hosted the sh
okay.
he hosted the show and wrote episodes. Unlike The Twilight Zone, which was all Rod, the quality control on Night Gallery wasn't up to speed. There were some great
Right.
episodes, and there were some really sucky ones, but the
Yeah,
creepy
true.
ones were very good. Just the way that show opened with that weird
And they were
music.
able to get away with stuff that they really couldn't do with the Twilight Zone.
Right.
However, the one episode I remember well, which scarred me, there was actually a Twilight Zone that I think was probably an influence on it. There was a Twilight Zone episode where Israeli soldiers are chasing a Nazi, and he's running through a museum, and this needs a portrait of Jesus, like, please God save me, like whatever. And then they're searching for him, and they look up, and there he's in, like, the Nazi or whatever, stuck in the SS guard is stuck in the painting or something like that.
Oh, that's
He's
that
like,
was a Night Gallery episode.
no. But the Night Gallery was something else. I think that was Twilight Zone. The Night Gallery was there was this museum where these portraits were of people, and they thought, and somebody went missing, and they went to the museum and they saw a portrait that looks like them, but it turns out it was them stuck in the painting. At the end of the episode, the museum flies away. It's actually a rocket ship, and because the girl who claimed it was her brother then ended up in one of the paintings. That was maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the other one
Well,
was,
you
but
know what? It might have been one of the revival episodes because The Twilight Zone went off the air in 1964. Then
right,
it comes back on in the 80s,
80s, yeah,
86, and then recently. So it could have been one of the revival episodes.
yeah.
But
The
the thing
Night
about
Gallery one was with the alien one. That was Night Gallery, though. Yeah,
Right, but the thing about Rod Serling, the creator of The Twilight Zone, is he just loved that what if kind of storyline.
he
What
was a
if?
genius.
And it's inspired me as a screenwriter all these years.
Yeah, we all have our inspirations. I grew up. Actually, the movie that got me into horror. I like horror is my favorite genre.
Right.
and it's ironic because the movie that got me into horror movies was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And then and that was like when I was 5. But while I was still 5, I saw Bride of Frankenstein. And by the time I was 6 or 7, I believe I was 6, watched House on Haunted Hill, and that was the first horror film to ever frighten me. The
Now,
first one actually got me nightmares.
are you talking about the
Vincent
remake?
Price. No, the one with Vincent
Oh,
Price.
the ones,
And
okay.
Vincent Price was that. Yeah, no, I was born in '87, so the the one with Jeffrey Rush. I know we're gonna go into Jeffrey Rush soon. Oh no, sorry, mixing up something. Sorry.
But
No,
I was going to mention that my friend Bill Malone directed the remake of
I
House
like the
on Haunted
remake, but that came out when I was
Hill. 11.
12.
Yeah, 11 or 12.
11 or 12. So I grew up on the classic, and Vincent Price became my first favorite actor. I actually thought that was I loved how they incorporated the character to have like Price's name, and to give him that Vincent Price look. And Jeffrey Rush is good in anything. Like, he's one of those actors that even if the movie's not great, his
He's great.
performance is just great. Him and Ian McShane. Like, even if the movie's bad, their performance is just spot on. Like, perfect.
Well, Gabe, you're a lot braver than me, because when those movies first came out, like House on Haunted Hill, I could not watch horror. I had too vivid imagination.
I had nightmares, though. I had nightmares.
I remember going to see a movie in '58 called The Brain from the Planet Eris. And it's a weird movie, and it's hardly scary today.
B horror. It's like more B horror.
Yeah, B horror. And I remember seeing that brain in windows it was a rainy day. Worst time to see a horror movie when you're a little kid is on a rainy day. It makes everything freakier. But
And rain is depressing for us. I don't know if like you. For me, the rain weather is depressing. Some people find it calming. I find it depressing and morbid. So I can imagine that. I can understand that.
Well, we've kind of changed our thoughts, though, in California, because we never get rain anymore.
Yeah.
It literally never rains.
So many droughts, I've heard. I have a lot of family.
It's horrible. But the idea, I could handle science fiction as a little kid because it was cool with spaceships and robots and things like that. But horror was a little too freaky. I had to work up my bravery attitude. There was a movie that was released in '60 called Village of the Damned. I don't know if you ever
Oh, I know, with the kids and the blonde hair.
Yeah, blonde-haired children with the eyes. Whoa, boy, that was freaky from the trailers.
Yeah. I just want to no, I know. I remember I watched them. I remember it was on a Sci-Fi Channel. I remember watching on back, but when the only cable we had was Cablevision.
There's a funny story about that movie, by the way. I interviewed Sterling Silliphant, who wrote the screenplay. Sterling Silliphant became a big Hollywood screenwriter. He ended up writing films like The Towering Inferno. And,
I watched that in a film in my film class.
Yeah. Sterling told me that.
Was it Paul Newman? Was that?
Yes, Paul Newman, Steve McQueen. Sterling told me that MGM bought that book out of galleys. It was John Wyndham was a big British author, and the title of the original book was called The Midwich Cuckoos. And it's this, but they didn't really know what it was. And so they started making the film in England. And when MGM found out what it was really about, that these women all get impregnated by these aliens, they just put the movie on the shelf. I mean, they made the movie and then they didn't release it. And then I guess the booking department in England was desperate one week, and they needed a film to fill a gap. So they put Village of the Damned in the theaters, and it became a phenomenon. They couldn't, they had to turn people away. So it was just one of those movies that just, it just captured the imagination. Kind of a simple little black and white movie that freaked everybody out.
It makes me think of Psycho. Like, Alfred Hitchcock was very risky with that. It was the first time they showed a toilet, and very risque for its time. And I learned about it before I even watched, and I actually really liked the film where Anthony Hopkins played Hitchcock, and it went into like the whole making of it. I thought that film was great, but I actually learned a lot about his process and how much he had to push to get that film out. I mean, the real Alfred Hitchcock. I just want to our network is asking, congrats on the fantastic body of work so far. What was it like working with the late David Carradine in My Suicide? I love David Carradine. I met his brother once, I believe.
Oh, David Carradine was wonderful. For the listeners who don't know about My Suicide, it's currently on Netflix. It's a teen dramedy about a high school senior who announces in his 5th period video class that he's going to commit suicide as his class project. So it freaks everybody out, and he goes through evaluation, all the psychological evaluations, and it follows him on his journey. And it's a great anti-suicide movie. We've had letters from people all over the world, teenagers who were on the edge and perhaps could have gone over the edge, who've
That
watched our movie
I love
and
that.
said it brought them back from it. Because the story of Archie is a great story that's called My Suicide. But David Carradine plays a guru in the movie who gives Archie some amazing advice, and I got a chance to spend some time on the set with him.
Amazing.
I even got a chance to ask him about his father because David's father, John Carradine, was like in 500 movies. I mean, he was in everything, and it was just so nice to be on the set with him. Such a legend.
He seems like he would be such a mensch, as I say, a real cool guy. Like I used to grow up, Kung Fu: The Legend Continues before I even had cable, and or maybe when I remember watching that show. He was like, I loved him growing up. I met his brother when I was at one of these cons, but and by the way, before Kill Bill came out, before the second one, I'm like, who'd be a great Bill? David Carradine, and they cast him. I'm like, wow.
The first Kill Bill movie, I have to say, if I'm like scrolling through titles and I see that playing, I always put it on. That to me is such a brilliant movie. I mean, I kind of worship at Tarantino's feet. The last movie he made, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I've seen a dozen times and
Phenomenal.
never get tired of it.
It's funny. I know one of the actresses who's with him in Stunt Double and Kill Bill, who's just been just about every one of his films since then. I know because Zoe Bell, and if you know who she is, and she played Kurt Russell's wife in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, she's the one who gets pissed off at
What's his name?
Brad Pitt.
The whole Bruce Lee scene.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So she, one of the Saw actresses who I'm a dear friend with, who I met on the Saw cruise 10 years ago, she invited me to premiere of this female style Fight Club movie called Raise that came out in 2013. She introduced me to the director, Josh Waller, who's worked with Elijah Wood and another Elijah to make the company Spectre Vision. And they've made he's produced like Cooties starring Elijah Wood and Rainn Wilson, and The Color Out of Space, the H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. I don't know if he's still involved with them, but Josh, so I met Josh there. Rebecca introduced me to Zoe Bell, and I've seen Zoe several times since. Such a sweetheart, but she's awesome. And I love seeing her in films. And it's funny because she created that whole trend on social media. They have that thing, and it was almost like, they have those, what's it called? Like, what they call, like, they have those challenges on social media. Like they have they have the ice bucket challenge, the ice water and the ice bucket. So she did the thing where all these celebrities were following, where you run into the screen and then you punch it and then you come out and it's a different somebody else and you headbang it and then somebody else is on TikTok. And she created that whole trend and all these big celebrities are following it. But Zoe's great. I love Zoe. And I remember she's Death Proof, with Kurt Russell. She's always been with Kurt Russell and all the, she's been in just about every Quentin Tarantino film since Kill Bill. She's great. I love Zoe. I actually wanted to mention, because you are apparently the James Bond like encyclopedia in addition to writing it, right? Or I assume so.
Yeah, I've been writing about Bond since the 70s, so it's almost 50 years. So I'm kind of the longest running film historian for 007. So yeah, I know a few things.
So I'm gonna say this is the epitome of Jewish geography, as I say. So after I went to Nassau Community College, then I went to Queens College, and then I went to school of visual arts for a couple semesters. But I had my first production job before I ever attended college. And one of my friends who I used to work with there, I worked for a couple of years after I finished SVA, for a rabbi named Rabbi Jonathan Rieti. Now, the rabbi's father the rabbi was the first religious person in the family. Now, the rabbi's father was an actor, as was his father, and his grandfather also with an actor by the name of Robert Rieti. Does that ring a bell?
Sure, of course. Robert Rieti is a voice actor as well as being a regular actor, and he was the voice of a number of characters in the Bond series.
Yes. So I worked for his son for a couple of years. I know his son very well, who's like this rabbi who's travels the world, is one of the most famous rabbis who speaks. He's a British rabbi, but he makes educational videos to help youth understand certain things. Like growing up in yeshiva, like a lot of things are taught to you, you don't understand, or you don't have the knowledge. So he helps break down, not just the kids understand, but the teachers, how to teach the kids so they understand. So this rabbi would tell us how when he was a kid, his father introduced him to Sean Connery, and so just to make his father's last film, I think, was Hannibal with Anthony Hopkins. His father was in The Omen. Robert is somebody I would have loved to meet, but he passed away around the time my friend started on this ongoing project. But it's such a small. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm walking over here to get my book for a second.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Can I still talk to you while you're over there? Can you hear me? Right?
Because I'm coming right back, but I wanted to pull him up in my book because my memory is a little faulty today. But I did do a Robert. Okay, so Robert Rieti was born in February 8th, 1923, died April 3rd, 2015. So he was 92. Nicknamed the Man of 1,000 Voices, this British actor dubbed the voices of Emilio Largo in Thunderball and Tiger Tanaka in You Only Live Twice. And he was also the pleading voice of the Blofeld-like figure in the pre-credits teaser for For Your Eyes Only. So he did some major voices.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because the Bond movies did more revoicing than most movies. For instance, Ursula Andress, who played the first Bond girl in Dr. No, was entirely revoiced. That's not her voice.
Really?
The lady who did the voice was a lady named Nikki van der Zyl, who was married to Leslie Bricusse, the famous composer-lyricist. And her voice pops up all over the early Bond movies. She's also the voice of she's the voice of Domino in Thunderball. She's also the voice of the hotel clerk in From Russia with Love. And she's the voice of Kissy in You Only Live Twice. So yeah, they like to revoice actors.
You know, it's interesting. Well, it's a quick thing. A question for you. What is in your opinion the best portrayal of James Bond?
Well, I'm a little bit
biased,
conflicted because it's axiomatic that you love the Bond you grow up with. So I grew up with Sean Connery. The first 5 movies, actually the first 4 movies for me, are just legendary. But I've become such a Daniel Craig fan. The last 5 movies, which have been very uneven, they
I hear what you mean.
Some are terrific and some aren't so terrific. But Craig has always delivered. He is the best Bond since Connery's early films.
I actually agree with you. I agree with you on that 100%. I think him and I grew up. See, I was born into the Pierce Brosnan. I grew up in the Pierce Brosnan Bonds.
Right.
But
which are okay.
Like,
I mean, Pierce is
it also felt too cheesy. It felt a little cheesy in his Bond movies. Like it felt like slaps, like very. Sorry, continue.
Well, it's interesting. When you study the Bond movies as much as I've studied them, you really get to know the trends. Roger Moore was needed in the mid-'70s because they needed to kind of offer a Bond for a new generation. And I think what you can't deny is that Roger's films were so successful, starting with this third one, The Spy Who Loved Me, that they became more spectacular. So you go through Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy. These are big tentpole epic movies that did business all over the world. So Roger introduced the Bonds to a whole new, or actually introduced the audience to a whole new Bond, who was very much appreciated. And I think after kind of a 2-picture kind of in between with Timothy Dalton, they tried to do a more serious Bond, and that didn't really work that well. They went back to Pierce Brosnan, and Pierce Brosnan brought a little bit of that Roger Moore panache.
Yeah, no, I hear what you mean.
Yeah.
I feel like I heard Timothy Dalton was one of the least favorite of a lot of the fans. From what or Pierce Brosnan, I really heard a little bit of
Timothy just didn't. He's a fine actor.
He's a great actor. I love him.
Great actor. And Living Daylights is actually a very entertaining film. But he, as Bond, kind of was in between. He didn't quite have the charm of Roger or Pierce, and didn't quite have the grit of Connery and Craig. So he was kind of in between. I don't think the writing was that terrific for his film. Actually, The
That's not his fault, really.
The Living Daylights was written for Pierce Brosnan, but Pierce Brosnan couldn't get out of his contract in that TV series, Remington Steele.
Right.
They had to get Dalton for that.
Yeah, I know the whole thing with like, yeah, a lot of actors, even like reprising roles, like the Hocus Pocus. I just saw Thora Birch the other week. They're asking her to reprise her role in Hocus Pocus 2, but because of her shooting schedule, it's not that she doesn't want to. She just shooting schedule prevents you from, taking another job sometimes. I think that was Will Smith when he had to choose between Suicide Squad and Independence Day 2. You know what I mean? It just happens.
I'm kind of glad he didn't do Independence Day 2. I just think the movie was just kind of
silly.
Yeah, it just didn't work.
It was fun, but it was silly. It was
the
like
first one is one of my favorite films of all time. I can't tell you how many times I'm surfing channels and I come to the moment where Bill Pullman, as the President of the United States, gets up on top of that truck and says, "This is our Independence Day."
I rented that from Blockbuster so many times. Oh my god, 90s! I remember in '96.
Movie.
Yeah,
there's not one fault with that movie, and it's so funny. A friend of mine was pointing out that it's literally a remake of War of the Worlds. I mean, it's almost exactly structurally.
It's funny. Sorry, my ticks. I took a disaster film class, and my professor knows some like nose roll and whatever, but he's very critical of certain disaster films, and Independence Day is one of them. However, he what's it called? What was it? He had some things about it, but I forgot what I was going to say. I had a total that happens sometimes.
Well,
but
it was one of those movies that was so perfectly cast, so perfect.
Yeah. Yes, that's for sure. That was it. Mars Attacks. I remember a lot of people. It frowns upon it, but apparently Mars Attacks was filmed before Independence. It felt like it was a satire of Independence Day, but it was actually filmed before it was supposed to be released. But because of Independence Day, they decided not to release it. And it actually or at the or whatever I don't remember exactly what happened, but Independence Day hurt Mars Attacks, and you wouldn't expect Mars Attacks to really do better than Independence Day anyway, because it's like a comedy, but everybody thought it was a satire, but it was really being filmed around the same time. Just interesting.
It's amazing how sometimes you can be working on a film for months and months and months, and you not realize that somebody else is working on a film months and months that
That's
are just
very similar.
Close. And it just happens that way. I know Albert Broccoli, the producer of the Bond movies, was always upset when another Bond movie would come out at the same time, like when the Casino Royale spoof came out.
What do you mean spoof? They did a spoof on Casino Royale?
They did, 1967. The Casino Royale rights were not sold to Broccoli and Saltzman when they bought the series in 61. They were already owned by a producer named Charles K. Feldman, who was also a top talent agent. But they had already started the Connery series, so he couldn't find anybody that with Connery. So he made a deal with actually, I shouldn't say he made a deal. I'm confusing it with another issue. But I'm sorry?
Signed a contract, or
well, no, he couldn't make it. He couldn't interest anybody else in playing Bond, so he decided to do a big send-up of Bond. So Casino Royale has Woody Allen, Peter Sellers, David Niven, Orson Welles, William Holden, Ursula Andress, Barbara Boucher. I mean, it's a big lumbering lummox of a spoof with 5 directors and 8 writers and a total mess. But that came out the same year that the 5th official Bond movie, You Only Live Twice, came out. And Broccoli was furious because the grosses for You Only Live Twice were low because everybody thought the other movie was the official Bond movie of the year.
I can't imagine Pink Panther and Peter Sellers playing a James Bond character, only in a parody, like the Pink Panther. Like, is this your dog? Sorry, I also grew up on like those. Yeah, Peter Sellers is great.
No, that is not my dog.
Does your dog bit? I was like, well, I would like a room. He was great.
I gotta turn off the phone. Excuse me. Sorry.
Fine. I say the next generation is going to wonder why the hell is a hashtag doing a landline, and said somebody's going to wonder what the hell is a landline. No, but yeah, hold on. Another question. Speaking of Will Smith, Steve Talk has been for a while about. Oh, there's been talk that Will Smith or Idris Elba could be the new 007. I heard Idris Elba, but if an actor of color is cast in James Bond, should it be the new 007 or 008 with the new name? What is your take on that? Do you think because of a different color, they should change the number, or they should give it a little different twist on the title or the
Well,
characters?
you're opening a huge can of worms because it's this talk uh, um, this talk is all over everything. First of all, Idris Elba's too old. I mean, you can't start working on a Bond series at
Yeah, I
50.
didn't
I
think of
mean, you
that.
got to start in your 30s like Daniel Craig. I
He was in his 30s when he started?
30, I think he was 36 or 37. He's now
Wow,
53.
he did not look about the same age as me. Like, and I look young for my age, though. I'm about to be 35, so.
Well, it's interesting. First of all, there was a lot of rumor flying that the next Bond would be a woman because in this movie, which we just saw, No Time to Die, they gave the 007 number to a woman, Lashana Lynch's Nomi character, but they just gave her the number. It had nothing to do with her being
And
James Bond.
even the director came out and said we're not changing the gender of
No,
the.
no, you can't take a 60-year-old series and shove it
True.
into reverse and come up with a whole different thing.
I mean,
The
they did it with Oceans. The Ocean. Then again, the Ocean's 8 type of thing. Then again, I didn't see Ocean's 8, so I'm not sure if it worked as a part of
It
the.
was fun. It was fun, but it was entirely. It's like the Ghostbusters
3,
yeah,
the other one,
with
yeah.
the women, which was fun. It was nothing to write home about. By the way, the latest Ghostbusters movie, which I
Oh,
wasn't sure I wanted to see, I
I
thought was
loved it.
terrific.
I loved it, and I
Oh,
met
it was
Ernie Hudson
great.
a few times. He's great, but I love the movie.
Oh
I
yeah, no,
loved
it was wonderful. But getting back to Bond, um, let's face it, Bond is probably going to be a white guy from the Commonwealth forever. 100 years from now, I predict that we'll be talking. Well, I don't know if I'll be talking about it, but somebody will be talking about Bond 86, and it'll be,
Timeless.
it'll be a white guy from Australia or New Zealand or London. And that's
The
just
legacy is timeless.
the Bond
It's
legacy is timeless. It's more than one actor. They're going to reboot the series with a new actor. We're not sure exactly what the story is going to be, but it's going to be fun. The thing I tell people is whereas some series just get to be so bad that they just kind of write themselves out of the record books, Bond is always pretty much good quality movies. Even the ones you don't like that much have good things to write home about. And I think that it's just a series that just keep on giving because it's a family audience. That's the other thing about Bond that's different than
it's more than just a following, it's a fandom.
it's a family. You can take your grandmother, you can take your 8-year-old, and everybody
Any
has a good time.
generation.
And there are very few guarantees in the movie business. You don't really know sometimes what you're going to get. With Bond, you know that you're going to get solid.
I watched as a kid. My grandmother watched it when she was older. We all every generation of my family watched the Bond movies.
Exactly.
It's just the way it was. And CJ actually offers to take. There's another one of my co-hosts. He'll take on the role. Actually, he has the hair for it. I feel like he could do it, but
hair alone ain't going to do it.
Yeah. He also loved Afterlife. Oh, he has a question. The world is not enough. Yes or no? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
My favorite Pierce Brosnan. I
Really?
just love the way Denise Richards looks in shorts.
I mean,
hello.
who doesn't? Then again, Wild Things is probably everybody's favorite role. I feel like I know girls who've had crushes on her because of that movie. I know
my film of hers is Starship Troopers.
I love Starship Troopers. And listen, I love Dina Meyer. And she actually grew up before me, but 30 minutes from me in Forest Hills on Long Island, but yeah.
I was surprised that Casper Van Dien didn't rock after that. I guess he just never rose to anything hype, but I thought he was so perfectly cast in that movie.
And they did a third one which was so. It was interesting how they did the God Bug. The second one I actually liked, but then after a while it got silly, and then the third one just felt like it was just a B harm. Obviously the first one was it had its Neil Patrick Harris. It was great, but it was it had its humor, but it was fun. But it's I usually love sequels. I love sequels for the most part. Like I'm not so I'm somebody who could I don't like to compare things. Like I could see a movie that I like to I could see a movie I don't like, but still acknowledge great writing, great cinematography, great acting, great this. I can see a movie I love and see flaws, but I don't like I go into a sequel or remake seeing it as its well as a sequel, but as a remake I see it as its own thing. I don't see things and I don't feel like everything has to be a comparison. Like people like audiences make it. But I
Well,
know
yeah, I hear you. I mean, the thing that bothers me are remakes. I find that remakes generally suck, with a few exceptions, particularly science fiction remakes. I mentioned earlier I used to love to go to these Saturday morning, twin bills when I was a kid. I mean, one of my all-time favorite movies was The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original black and white from '51 with Michael Rennie.
yeah.
And the
That was
remake,
that's also timeless. Like, you
timeless.
the thing that walks out, like, you see that
That's
everywhere.
big silver robot, and the remake was just terrible. It was pointless.
Yeah.
The same thing for the Time Machine remake. Another great movie from the '60s, the original Time Machine. The new one kind of sucked, but I like the Planet of the Apes movies, it's particularly
Yes.
the recent ones.
Yeah,
They
not the Tim Burton ones, the trilogy they did, I thought they were phenomenal. I wasn't a big fan of Dawn, but I loved Rise and I loved War. And I love how War explained not just about the apes, but almost like the reverse. How it didn't just kill humans, but the ones who survived, it explained how they were killed off because it caused them to become like the evolution going backwards. They become they turn into their animalistic, nonsensical inability to reason, and it all made it all it gave it explained it gave more of a whatever it gave some foundation.
Oh yeah, no, and I think that anybody who doubts the effectiveness of digital effects today just needs to watch those Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah.
You are completely convinced that those apes are real and that they're
Yes.
not effects.
Yes. And I just love and the relationship, even like the humans have built. There's always a human building a relationship with the apes, and but you see like emotion there. You see and also the way like that whole thing on the first one, damn dirty apes, like the way they play off the
Oh
originals,
yeah. Oh,
very spot on,
very,
clever,
very
and
strong.
beautiful. I just hold on one second. I really dig your coolest guy movie ever, Doc. Great classic actors like Coburn and Garner. Is he talking about James Garner? Is
James
that who?
Garner and
Oh, I
James
love
Coburn.
James Garner.
I hooked up with a French filmmaker who went to all the original locations that were The Great Escape was made in '62 and showed them how they look today. And we featured interviews with most of the cast. And we actually had one of the few interviews with Steve McQueen ever made on the
Really?
set of that movie. We had about 40 seconds of McQueen, which is 40 seconds more than anybody had ever seen.
I know you have to go in. I just want to mention My Fellow Americans, one of my favorite comedies. James Garner and Jack Lemmon. That will
All
always be
right.
one of my. I grew up in that when I was a kid. Again, I could appreciate that stuff. But now I rewatch and I could appreciate it even more because I understand more than half the stuff. Than
Well, if
but
people are interested in film history, I would like to just mention my podcast,
yeah, please.
which is called Steve Rubin's Saturday Night at the Movies. We're a film history site. I interview people involved in either the movie or people who write about that movie as experts. And we're having a lot of fun with it. It's on the Amazon, Apple, and Spotify sites. Rubin, Rubin, Steve Rubin, Saturday Night at the Movies. Just a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun. And I'm trying to build that brand a little bit and get more information because we really have to preserve the history of classic films. You know, it's these movies are really important, and people need to know the context of why they were made and how they were made. I also want to talk a little bit about my children's picture book.
Yes. Can I
Uh,
bring up the cover quickly
of
as
course,
you're
of course.
here? Please talk
Uh,
about it. I just want to bring this up.
Yes, yes. Well, I have this little hobby where I listen to classic movie scenes while I'm shaving. I actually listen to the whole movie on audio. I'm probably one of the few people in North America who still makes audio cassettes. And one day I was listening to the soundtrack to The Diary of Anne Frank, the 1959 version that George Stevens directed. And there's a scene in the movie where the kids are chasing Mushi around the attic before they have to stop and when the workmen come. And suddenly dawned on me that, wait a second, what did this cat think of this strange situation where these people have to tiptoe during the day or they can't tiptoe at all. And then at night, they never go outside. And I went to my friend David Miller, and the two of us came up with this idea that originally started as a movie idea and morphed into this children's book. And then now it's morphed again because the book is Anne's story from the cat's point of view. And for those of you
Yes.
guys who don't know it, there really was a cat in the attic. His name was Mushi. He was Peter's cat who was brought in. In our movie idea, which we're out in the process of selling, it's an animation type project. Mushi leaves the attic every day and joins the Dutch animal resistance against the Nazis. And the Nazis in our story are the German Shepherds and Rottweilers that patrol the canals. And so it becomes an action adventure story, a kind of a revenge fantasy. We call it like Inglorious Bastards for kids. So,
Yeah.
so we're having a lot of fun with that. And the book's available on Amazon. It's really popular. It's a way of teaching the story of that difficult period, that horrifying period, but in kind of a gentle way about what was going on with the Jews of Amsterdam. And I think it's important to know that these events actually took place and that maybe encourage college students around the country that giving the Nazis salute because you think it's cool is really a stupid thing to do.
Yeah. Before, I know you have to go in a minute. I just wanted to tell you I read the book today. You sent me the PDF and I was in tears. I was in reading it in a listen. Not only listen, I have relatives. My grandfather, grandmother, and my great uncle were in the Holocaust. My great uncle was actually on the line to go into the gas chambers, and a Nazi sympathizer, like for a very brief moment, he gained a heart. He grew a heart because my uncle hadn't eaten in weeks. That the whatever bracelet he had like fell right off his wrist. He was a stick.
Oh my God.
And when he got rescued after he was they had to feed him with an eyedropper because he couldn't eat yet. But also it was actually when I finished the story and I read the significance and the relevance of the cat and this like the whole thing about the not just the spider term, but like more about the significance of the cat. And I just like this. More people have to read this, and I need to talk to you. I'm going to touch base with you about this book because this is a beautiful book, and I know a lot of people who would read this. I think there's a lot of things a lot of people I want to bring this up to, and I actually spoke to. I'm going to talk to you about it if I can call you this week. There's a few things, if that's all right with you. I want to discuss a couple of things with you because
Absolutely.
I would love to.
I'm
I think in
constantly,
my community, I live in a very Jewish community in Long Island in New York, and I was telling my friend about it, and I have some ideas to help get out the book to schools and to Jewish, not also even also less religious. And thank you, Joe, thank you guys, and but I really think this is an important book to get out there because I just want to mention one actor I know was in a movie called Triumph of the Spirit with Willem Dafoe and Robert Loggia and Edward James Olmos. My friend, he's this actor who played Willem Dafoe's brother in the movie. It's his first film about a story about Greek Jews who had to go through the Holocaust. Willem Dafoe. I don't know if you know the film, but
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
what I loved about it is it showed the horrors of war without actually showing the horrors of war. It was a story about love, triumph, family, survival, and it was powerful and got the message about the war across without being too graphic, without showing such horror like Schindler's List and the pianist. And this book is like the perfect equivalent of that, where it's not extreme. It's a perfect level of historical relevance, power, but it's powerful, it's emotional, it's relevant, and it's meaningful.
Thank you, Gabe. That really means a lot to me. I mean, we put our heart and soul into this project because we really felt that the people of today, particularly young people who have virtually no relationship to this era at all, need to be aware of things because, as many people have said over the years, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. And we have to keep vigilance. We have to fight the anti-Semitism in the world with every tool we have. And reaching young people, the thing that will win us this war is education. And education is knowing the history. And even if you can present it in a gentle way, you're giving people history. We must remember these moments.
Yeah, agree.
Thank you.
Of
Great
course.
talking with you.
Yeah, and we'll be in touch, but thank you so it was great having you on, and this whole conversation was just like I loved it. Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome, Gabe. And
I'm gonna we'll be in touch because I have some things that I would love to help you with your book to get it out to in my area and
okay,
like it'd be
absolutely.
amazing.
I'm up for it.
But let's be in touch. Have a great night.
Thank you.
And but I'll just say out here, anybody have a great Passover. I know it's coming up, but don't be too much of a masochist. You know, it doesn't have to
Oh,
be masochist. Get a matzah,
I I should say that people who want to get in touch with me can go through my Facebook pages. I have a Facebook page, Steve Rubin, Rubin, and then I have a Facebook page, Steve Rubin's Saturday Night at the Movies, and I have a Facebook page, the James Bond Movie Encyclopedia, and I have a Facebook page, the Twilight Zone Encyclopedia. So people can reach
good.
out to me, and I love hearing from people, and thank you so much.
Of course. One last thing. CG says, for the record, Richard Grieco is the best 007.
No comment.
Let's just leave it on that humorous note. Thank you, CJ. Have a great night, Steve.
Okay.
Schlafgesund.
Take care.
Good night.